Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. No, seriously, thank you for joining. It is Friday of Microsoft Ignite 2025. Most of the people and customers, even my team members that I talked to yesterday, had no idea that Friday is also an occurrence. So to see this full room is incredible. So I really appreciate you being here. My name is Anavi Nahar. As always, it is an honor to be representing the Azure Databricks product group here at Microsoft. I'm joined by Miranda Luna, who's Director of Product at Databricks. We're excited to share how you can accelerate this transformation in this modern AI world for your company or your business using Azure Databricks. Here's what we'll touch on today. Of course, we'll have an overview of Azure Databricks. Most of you may already be familiar. We'll share how customers are using the full power of analytics, insights, and now AI with Azure Databricks. We'll give you an overview of Azure Databricks Genie, your kind of virtual coworker you can ask questions to in the context of your business. We'll share the latest announcements, some of which we're making right now at this stage. We'll also wrap with a demo, so pray to the demo gods that Miranda's demo works really well. We have a packed session, so we'll keep questions to the end if you don't mind. As many of you may already know, Microsoft and Databricks joined hands way back officially in 2018. Way before this whole AI wave, or agentic cloud as we call it. You've probably heard me say this before, but to me, that is the coolest thing that ever happened. Two companies came together to truly democratize data and put customers first, so that customers don't have to worry about things like identity, access management, and can truly get those rich insights on their data. And that's now even paved these advanced analytics and AI that we can do to further do more with the data in your business context. What this partnership enables is native, seamless integration across the Microsoft ecosystem. Whether that's Copilot Studio, Foundry, Power Platform, my favorite, Power Automate, and we'll talk more about these today too. Also, at our last conference, back in June of 2025, we announced further extension of this partnership for more decades to come, which is crazy because we feel like we're just getting started, but there's so much more to do together. Azure Databricks is what we call a truly first-party service. What that really means is that we co-build, we co-develop. Databricks team members are just like another team here at Microsoft. So you, as an end customer, don't have to worry about who to go for support, looking at a different bill. It's all one unified experience. Because of our partnership, we'll take care of that for you at the back end. And you get the benefit of Microsoft security, compliance, that real trust, together with the speed and agility really powered by Databricks. Recently, we also hired a third-party vendor to do performance benchmarking, and the numbers speak for themselves. As Satya said, we continue to ensure Azure Databricks is the best Databricks. With Azure Databricks, you have a powerful data intelligence platform that you can put to work on your company's data, whether that's structured or unstructured data, all in one place for business analysts, data scientists, and now even agents. With Databricks SQL, you have a modern high-performance data warehouse that you can use to store and serve your data to have outcomes that your business needs to go further. You can use tools like Notebook or the Assistant to do data science and machine learning. You can also build Genie spaces to let your users talk to data and get those rich insights without even needing to know modern data engineering. And you can even use the new agent bricks to build production-ready agents to serve your data. We'll touch more on that later too. And all of this, of course, with Unity Catalog, you can get unified governance, discoverability, and collaboration. So you're not worrying about, hey, how do I access this? Who has access to this? How is this governed? I want to make sure that I'm compliant, etc. And because Azure Databricks is connected natively, as I was saying earlier, to the rest of the Microsoft ecosystem, it can bring those rich insights analytics to your Microsoft products that you're using, like Power BI, Foundry, Copilot Studio, you name it. We're also working on some Excel integration, which is really cool. And this is what we hear from customers too. Whether that's JetBlue, who uses Azure Databricks Lakehouse and LLMs built upon their own data to deliver better passenger experiences, leveraging real-time streams of weather, IoT, FAA data, JetBlue now operates the world's first digital twin for efficient and safe operations, significantly minimizing delays. We all love lesser delays, I'm sure. By deploying AI and ML enterprise products on Databricks, JetBlue has thus far unlocked a relatively high ROI just in a couple of years. So that's benefits for end customers, but also for companies themselves. Another example is AT&T, who now delivers predictive solutions that help protect their customers, like you or I, as well as the business, by stopping fraud before it even happens. With Azure Databricks, they're able to ingest huge amounts of different data, whether that's customer data, raw data. They're able to ingest all of this really quickly in real time and make it usable and build ML models that deliver updates to their employees directly and alerts, such that fraud detection is real time. They can outwit fraudsters and stay ahead of their efforts by preventing they don't game the system, whether that's illegal unlocks, robocalls, robotext. Oh my God, robotext, don't even get me started. And also preventing identity theft. They now have over 100 fraud detection ML models in production, and fraud is down 80%. Those were just a couple of examples that I highlighted, but we have thousands and thousands of customers across the bar, whether that's Barilla, Adobe, who I just talked to yesterday, to Walgreens and more. The ease, scale, and performance of Azure Databricks is what customers love. This has been one of the fastest growing Azure services and continues to grow in spite of such a large base, which is incredible. Now, I don't want to be the only one telling you about this myself. We thought it'd be great to hear from one of our customers themselves. What better way to showcase than hearing from end users and end customers themselves? EyeFi is a leading provider supplying businesses worldwide across the globe with camera-led spatial intelligence solutions to unlock invaluable industry and performance insights. Will leads the data and AI team at EyeFi, where he combines his background in computational neuroscience and ML to develop practical AI applications for the physical world. Let's hear more from Will.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I wanted to introduce a little how we have explored and used Azure Databricks on how we've built physical AI at EyeFi. There are 4 main areas that we leverage Databricks today. We digitize hundreds of spaces. We take information in real time about people, objects, and events that are created, stream that, and centralize it into a unified lakehouse. So the centralization of data has allowed us to see across many different spaces and leverage that for creating machine learning models using MLflow. We also, as we were growing, we were able to increase our governance of all of this data, meaning making sure that a particular machine learning engineer only has access to specific data. Product managers only have access to certain types of product analytics. We do this all using the Unity catalog. An important area of this has also been able to make sure that people are able to fish for themselves, meaning that you can democratize data access and analytics, allowing you to better leverage your data engineering and your data analysts, and now you can do more data-supported decisions across your entire organization. We do this through dashboards, queries, and leveraging Genie. One important area that we also use to expand is allowing us to share the data that we've centralized with our clients, meaning we use delta sharing to create safe spaces to extend that, which they then have access to, allowing us to use our platform that they can build on top of and create solutions on their own. So I want to give a little bit of background of what EyeFi does and how this then feeds more into using Azure Databricks. EyeFi creates digital twins of physical spaces. So for example, this is a live store running frictionless checkout and live fraud detection. Using only IP cameras on the ceilings, we build a game-like representation of the physical space. You can see shopper avatars, you can see all of the fixtures and gondolas and products, and every single person here is an anonymous avatar, what they're looking at and what they're touching as they move through the space. All of this data is gathered in real time and piped up to Azure Databricks for further analysis and additional models to run on top of them. We create moments of interest from every interaction that a shopper does, such as this green shopper here. This person is looking at and then picking up some butter and sausages from a grocery store. Every single journey becomes this stream of these events of interest, which then we use to create additional pieces like Lego bricks. When we have this all centralized, we're able to then create more powerful models, such as the intelligence layer that we built called 𝗦𝗲𝗍𝗍, which is then able to see and track this particular person, gather the information all together and contextualize it, look at particular cameras, look at particular products, and then make decisions about what this person did in real time. It stores all of the video feeds, it stores all of the product interactions, and is able to then say, this person picked up peppers. Then, following the same person, you can see this whole entire journey, and then you can then see this person didn't actually take anything, they looked at it. So you're able to start doing things like attribution and engagement metrics. When you're able to do attribution engagement metrics and you start building these types of Lego bricks, you can actually leverage things when it's centralized into Azure Databricks using Genie, such as trying to find out what is your in-store physical conversion. And you can ask directly this way through natural language. So you can understand this person, this group of people, they walked by this, oh, they looked at this, they touched this, they then decided to buy this. And since this is the physical space, and you can again leverage this natural language interface, you can ask more specific questions like which particular shelf had the best conversion from your engagement to your decision making. So you can understand how you can change physical spaces and understand what needs to be changed for those operations to improve things like engagement. It allows you to have the insights into the physical world in an API-like manner. This is how EyeFi is leveraging Databricks today. We keeping data engineering, maintenance, and analytics costs low, and using MLflow for models that we have centralized a lot of our data for. So thank you, and I'll pass it over to Miranda.
Thank you, thank you. I am so excited to be here talking a little bit more about Genie and some of the updates that we're announcing today. If you think about the history of Databricks, and I'm going to do a little bit of a storytelling before we get into the latest and greatest. It started as Managed Spark for data engineers. Super exciting, but 5% of the company, a very important 5%. But that was not kind of making the data in the lakehouse available to everybody. So what did we do? Added a notebook, added a couple things like the ML platform, MLflow. Great, machine learning engineers could succeed on Databricks. Now we're up to 7%. Then we decided to invest in partnership, of course, with Microsoft to bring the lakehouse to SQL Fluent analysts. Fantastic, we're getting bigger and bigger percentages. But that still excluded such a large number of folks in the organization from being able to operate on the same trusted data that those other folks were. So with what we invested in most recently, and we announced this at kind of the Data and AI Summit recently, is AIBI. So a big component of AIBI being Genie. Genie being our offering for conversational analytics. So we provide it as a first-party service directly in the platform. We provide it as a text-to-SQL agent via API. But historically, if you wanted to kind of bridge those two things, like, great, I'm happy to have folks go into Databricks 1, super simple experience, use Genie, ask and answer some questions on trusted data, the same data that everybody else is operating on, not something that's kind of extracted or extrapolated or binned and kind of cut off at a certain place. But then if, those same folks operate in teams all the time. Those same folks are kind of in different areas of the Microsoft ecosystem during different parts of their day. And you had to kind of put quite a bit of effort into kind of connecting the dots from those two things. So we wanted to make sure we were kind of in partnership, making it easier to do that. So if you want to use the first-party UI, fantastic. You want to make sure that somebody can ask and answer their questions directly from Teams. We want to make that turnkey. You shouldn't have to write any code to do that. So I mentioned that we started with AIBI, again, included with Databricks, your Azure Databricks, governed and secure with Unity Catalog. Anavi talked a lot about that, and we think that that kind of unified governance and increasingly semantics is also going to be critical to ensuring the accuracy, not just of traditional analysis, but as you leverage agents more and more and more in your organization. So with Genie, again, this is a little look at kind of the first-party end product experience in Azure Databricks. You can ask and answer any question in natural language. You can get back an answer. It's going to have some tabular results. It's going to have a nice natural language summary. It's going to have some visualizations. But historically, if you wanted to kind of bring the same experience to teams, you'd be kind of on your own. You'd have to kind of go and wrangle every API that we have. You'd have to think about how do I implement retry with queuing to stay within my limit? How do I do all these different things? And we did have some customers do that, right? So we have plenty of customers who are leveraging Genie via the UI, some folks who are leveraging it as an integrated companion in AIBI dashboards, and of course some customers, and this is the AA out in the UK, which is kind of like AAA, but 2 A's, leveraging Genie via APIs in Teams and other aspects, areas of the Microsoft platform. And it's that last one that we're really excited to talk about more today and to kind of demonstrate some of the investments we've made in making that connection a lot more seamless and turnkey. When I was kind of setting up the demo that we'll go through a little later today, it took about 5 minutes, right? Set up my Genie space, add a few tables, they're documented in Unity Catalog. Platform recommends a couple different curation pieces I can do. I test something in AgentBricks with Knowledge Assistant because I'm going to use Genie as my text-to-SQL agent for one thing. I'm going to use Knowledge Assistant and AgentBricks as my kind of unstructured summarizer for some other data. And then I want to put it all behind a multi-agent supervisor so an end user doesn't have to think about, do I go here, do I go there to ask the question, where's the right data? They can just go to one interface, wire that up to Teams, and I'm off and running. I can just ask any question, and very intelligently behind the scenes, a user is going to be able to either go directly to Databricks, go directly to Teams, get the same answer. And very important to think, when we're Databricks, why do we invest in Genie? I mentioned, of course we want the entire organization to be able to benefit from the same exact data, get the same exact answer, leverage the same exact KPIs. But we also, when we're investing in this, we're like, is there anything we can do that's a little bit better? Like, is there a benefit to us, offering something in the platform, or should we just kind of partner with a number of the folks that we do? And we said, well, I think there's a couple things we can do that'll give you an even better experience. And one of them is, by being part of the data platform layer, Genie is able to learn from the metadata and semantics in Unity Catalog. So when you go into kind of curate an agent, everybody's excited to do that. Brand new agent, blank piece of paper, kind of not always super obvious where to start. Well, when you're in the data platform, you say, hey, I want to point this agent to be based on this data. Now all of a sudden we can recommend you kind of a number of different ways to curate it to kind of help with higher and higher accuracy. You don't have to kind of come up with every idea on your own. You can review suggestions, say yes, and be off and running, tweaking as you go. Also, when you're kind of building an agent from scratch, it's a little tricky to sometimes know what sort of instructions should I use. Like, what are some of the tools that I have in my tool chest to be able to kind of pull different levers and get kind of more accurate responses. So with Genie, we make that super transparent. You can add your data. You can document it either in Unity Catalog or extend those definitions in Genie. You can add general text instructions. You can define different measures and dimensions local to the Genie space and decide if you want to push them up. You can also add example SQL queries to help train the model to respond to kind of questions phrased in ways that the end business users of these Genie spaces may ask them. And as they're giving feedback, right? That feedback loop is critical. Nothing's perfect on day one. Data evolves, context evolves, the world evolves. Really making sure that kind of as users are giving feedback, hey, this is a correct answer, incorrect answer. Anyone who's kind of curating and in charge of the space and helping support all those users at scale can make decisions on, yeah, I agree, that was an incorrect answer. I want to take this action. It's recommended yes to that one, no to this one. Rerun my benchmarks, my evaluation, and my unit tests, and make sure that my accuracy is not being compromised. So we've got some wonderful customers who are actively using Genie in production today. Some very cool different use cases. These two are from Sega and HP. I won't read it. I know you guys can. But again, the ones we're super excited to kind of demonstrate today are kind of making that kind of integration with the Microsoft Power Platform a lot more seamless and no code. So again, historically, you're not going to see me fire up Visual Studio today. If this was a year ago, I would have had to. I would have been like, oh, let's look. We issued this request. We got the response. we don't have to do that anymore. You can kind of have users seamlessly operating against the same information in the same curated context, whether they're in Teams, other areas of Power Platform, or directly in Databricks. So that's the background, but I'm going to welcome Anavi back up to give us some of the exciting stuff.
Awesome. I love how Miranda said it took her 5 minutes to create the demo. And in one of our previous sessions, BRK128, if I remember correctly, Shanku and I were talking about how the best part of the demo is that we don't have any prep for it. It just works, which is awesome. All right. I'm super excited to be here on stage and announcing that Genie, Azure Databricks Genie, is now available in Microsoft Foundry tools. Building AI agents, it's not just about intelligence, it's about action. To deliver real business value in this day and age, it's so important for agents to connect with systems where the work and the insight actually is. And also, while making sure we're accessing enterprise data extremely securely. We want to orchestrate tools where your teams are already, there and using. And that's where Microsoft Foundry Tools Catalog comes in, which we just announced this week here at Microsoft Ignite earlier this week. We have 1,000+ officially curated tools from Microsoft and many trusted partners. Foundry Tool Catalog gives you developers and enterprises everything they need to build agents from scratch that are powerful, integrated, and ready for scale. And I'm so excited that Azure Databricks Genie is now available in Foundry Catalog's tools. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So here you have your Foundry UI in case you haven't seen it. You simply search for Azure Databricks Genie and hit connect. You'll see it right there, that purple button. You enter your info such as workspace ID, your Genie space, and basically you're set. From there, we use the demo agent that we have set up. It's a quick click. You ask whatever question you want. In this case, it's, hey, what catalogs have certain privileges? Access is super important. The best part is you don't have to leave the pane, right? You're there in that same website as a whole. You're not losing the context. A quick login later, validating that you have access and permission after your sign-in is successful. Takes a little bit. There we go. Approving, yes, this is exactly what we want to do. And that's it. You have your answer. It's simple as that. You did nothing. You didn't leave Foundry, but you have all of the insights powered from your data within your business context exactly where you need it. We didn't stop there. Azure Databricks Genie is also now available in Copilot Studio, which is super, super exciting. Love this. Yes, thank you. I'm seeing some claps over there. Previously, connecting Genie, as Miranda was saying, to the Microsoft ecosystem was challenging. Organizations had to develop custom connections, maintain API flows, validation, regression testing, and also it's just maintenance overhead as a whole. This complexity really limited your organization's ability to distribute Genie's trusted insights efficiently across Microsoft platforms that you're already using. It's super simple. You can connect a Genie space to Copilot Studio as an agent or a tool over MCP and instantly make Genie's trusted insights available in Teams, which is my favorite part, or M365 Copilot by publishing a Genie-enabled Copilot Studio agent. Genie's complete context of your data from Azure Databricks will enable Copilot Studio to deliver richer, more accurate insights within the context that you need it. These new integrations that we just talked about between Genie, Copilot Studio, as well as Genie and Microsoft Foundry will solve challenges by providing easy and secure ways, underlining bold italics on the secure, to connect to each platform. Additionally, by leveraging MCP, updates to the underlying Genie APIs are seamlessly managed for users, eliminating the need to modify your integration. The whole point is that you don't have to worry about access, identity, authentication, management. We take care of that for you so you can focus on getting those business outcomes quicker, faster, and enabling better insights. Of course, these two latest announcements, they build on our previous updates back in June of 2025, where we really decided to imagine a world where it was easy. All we had to do is connect Azure Databricks to Power Platform, maintain data and governance, which I said is key, and leverage the Azure Databricks Intelligence Platform to build those smart applications. This is what we started with. It was like, okay, imagine if this is reality. And we're so glad that that's exactly what we did back in June. Connecting Power Platform to your Power Platform applications to Azure Databricks was previously super frustrating. Teams had to rely on custom connectors, REST APIs, or indirect data exchanges through storage accounts, orchestrated pipelines. And we all know from experience how painful that is and also error-prone. Manual maintenance is just not something we want to encourage or do. These workarounds often also led to data duplication. As a result, it slows teams' ability to innovate. And in this day and age, with AI changes happening almost daily, weekly, it adds up overall. With the Azure Databricks Connector that we launched back in June, all of these problems are solved. There's no data duplication. All interactions happen in real time directly against your Azure Databricks tables, eliminating the need for data exports or any of those manual maneuvering that I was talking about, ensuring a single source of truth. Authentication is another big one. The connector leverages Microsoft Entra ID for secure authentication, supporting both user-based as well as service principal-based models and OAuth 2. Governance is relying on Azure Databricks Unity Catalog's fine-grained access controls, so you don't have to worry about that, directly within Power Platform. So there's no dual security models, you don't have to redo something, you don't have to sync things across the board as well. Auditing capabilities are also available, as you may know, through query history. All of this is super easy to set up, and there's limited to no maintenance. From Power Apps, Power Automate, and Copilot Studio, you simply just select the Azure Databricks Connector, you authenticate, and you start building. It's just a few simple steps. This way, the agent has the full context of your business, that data that you're trying to get those rich insights and analytics from. So you're not spending time making the connection, building it, doing all of that overhead. So hopefully you like this, and it's a lot easier for you as you build your agents. Speaking of agents, in case you haven't heard that term enough here at Ignite, here's Miranda to tell us more.
Awesome, thank you so much. So yes, agents are, the word of 2025, 2026, I'm sure it was 2024. And we are, as Databricks, partnered with Microsoft, of course, investing heavily in this area. So I mentioned Genie earlier today, which is kind of more of that turnkey business user-friendly UI with kind of a very easy to curate text-to-SQL agent if you want to use it in that way. We think of that as one of the agents that Databricks provides out of the box as part of the AgentBricks kind of platform. So what is the AgentBricks platform? I kind of started with the micro, like, hey, this is great, I can just ask a question of Genie, but now let's zoom out a little bit. So AgentBricks allows you to specify your problem, then optimize on your data, and then work kind of continuously in a loop to improve, leveraging kind of eval and inference tables. It is kind of the platform that we anticipate you using for a number of different agents, one of which is a text-to-SQL agent in Genie, certainly, but also the Knowledge Assistant, which we'll talk about a little bit more later today, as well as any other bespoke agents you may want. So you can think most of the workflows we talk about when we start to think about how can agents actually impact our business. It's not just, hey, let me ask and answer a question. It's usually take an action after that. And that's where we see kind of folks leaning into the AgentBricks platform and leveraging Genie, leveraging Knowledge Assistants for kind of asking and answering these questions, and then pairing that with agents that they kind of particularly curate within their organization to then take the next action. So you can imagine, I ask a question, have I had any incidents in this type of in this type of scope? I get an answer back. Maybe I want to then create a ticket for that to be reviewed. Maybe I want to run a particular script to kind of remediate the issue. So that is kind of how we see AgentBricks bringing kind of everything together to work in concert. But Knowledge Assistant is kind of another one of those agents that we provide right out of the box, similar to Genie. So whereas Genie is very focused on text-to-SQL, Knowledge Assistant and AgentBricks really helps with parsing unstructured data. So you think of it as like a really good complement to Genie. What you can do is start, of course, everybody has to create the agent, so declare what the agent is for. And then once you kind of point Knowledge Assistant and AgentBricks at a particular data source, so you can imagine you have a UC volume, you got a bunch of industry data, that's usually something that you want to pair with your kind of proprietary internal data. I'm going to show you a little bit of that in a demo shortly. But AgentBricks is going to automatically run and kind of create evaluation benchmarks based on that source. Recommend those to you, of course. It's Databricks, you can still modify everything, but we want to make it as kind of turnkey out of the box as possible. We also do some auto optimization of this agent as we kind of go through. So as you're asking and answering questions, as we see opportunities to kind of help modify, we allow those to kind of be recommended again directly to you as part of the platform. One of the things we're quite excited about, again, digging into the Knowledge Assistant a little bit more, is kind of that opening up access to unstructured data. So I mentioned files and maybe some industry data that you'd put in a Unity catalog volume, but also certainly PowerPoints, other sources, image files, audio files. We have folks kind of leveraging Knowledge Assistant, kind of pointed at all those unstructured data sources. And then certainly we want to make sure that no agent is better than its last eval run and how accurate it is for kind of the core set of cases. So that's supported out of the box. And then again, it's all the bells and whistles you're used to in terms of actually being production ready, docking into kind of your CI/CD processes, et cetera. So again, just to recap, Knowledge Assistant, we kind of do that ingestion end to end for you. If you want to point at a certain source, most common one we see is industry data, some documents in that kind of field. Then evaluate kind of the built-in evaluation and auto kind of generated evaluation capabilities. And then, of course, we will iterate and learn as that agent is actually leveraged. And we talked about productionalization, but of course, scale comes out of the box with Databricks. So one of the things that's so important is also thinking about what is the story of these things together. So I mentioned that AgentBricks is the platform. You have different agents for different tasks, some of which we'll provide to make it easier for you to kind of leverage for known kind of routine use cases, but there are also going to be agents that you incorporate as well that are bespoke to your business, that integrate with your other systems, that kind of help take the action after the insight. But what we do provide out of the box is not just kind of a framework, but also that kind of way to leverage a multi-agent supervisor. So when you have a panoply of agents, you have to figure out which one to kind of route a particular prompt to. This kind of supervisor agent helps you with that. And what's also very nice about kind of the Databricks platform, Azure Databricks platform, is you can do that kind of routing and guidance for when to use this agent, when to use that agent directly in the platform to give it a little bit more of an indication of where to go and how to behave. You don't have to kind of fire up Visual Studio and do that outside of the platform. You can kind of do all this end to end right within. Always like to include kind of a little bit of a view of answer quality. If folks ask like, okay, we do our evaluation on our specific agents and we can do eval on how is Knowledge Assistant doing, we can do eval on how is Genie doing, but do you guys do any other eval? Yes, we do a lot. So we do quite a bit of eval, not just in terms of kind of internal training sets, but also leveraging kind of public benchmarks and ensuring we're tracking against those. That's something we're going to always do. It's something we're kind of constantly pushing at. And with those, as I mentioned, kind of with Knowledge Assistant, with Genie, in particular, we abstract a little bit of the decision around which model, which version to use for which task. And that's kind of the benefit of going to Genie versus rolling your own text-to-SQL agent is all this evaluation that we're constantly doing versus the market, having new models released from a new provider. We're testing, we're trying to understand if it can do better in certain types of problems, and we're incorporating that on the back end without you having to do anything. So, a lot of slides. Let's do some demo. That's the more fun part. So, I got to log back in here. One moment. Okay. All right, we see Databricks? We're good? Oh, so excellent. So for folks who may not have seen Databricks before, this is just the home page. It gives me a little bit of pointers to kind of some different assets that I have. Of course, I can navigate through the entire platform as kind of an author type user. But today, we're just going to use some toy data for our example here today. So here, this comes out of the box. This is something you could go do afterwards if you want. I'm not using anything special. But we have some data from a fictitious bakehouse or bakery chain. I can look at some of my customer review data. It's going to start compute. Good job. I'm going to use Excel. So I can look at some of my customer review data. I also have other data related to my franchises, my customers, my suppliers. So I can use this in a number of different ways, whether that is going and doing some pipelining if these were bronze tables, building dashboards, analyzing in a notebook. But today we're going to see kind of what we can do with Genie and Knowledge Assistant around this kind of fictitious bakery. So I've got my data. And what I've done is I've already created a Genie space. That's pretty trivial. So I can either do it, from the left, or I could just say, create Genie space here, pick my different pieces here. But I already created one for today. And you can see when I pop in here and I'm just trying to make sure that I've kind of curated this in the right way, the first thing I can do is double check what data exists. I mentioned that semantics are so important, so we pull forward kind of all of the UC metadata that exists for the sales transactions table, for example. But if I wanted to, extend that in any way, let's say product, I could also say, this is all the things we sell, all our goods, and I'm actually going to use the synonyms field, goods, items, because with agent curation, what we often find is metadata, traditional metadata is actually super helpful as a starting point, but very often you want to extend it. I'm not going to, in a centrally used table that's kind of leveraged in data engineering tasks by my data science team, I don't need to explain to those people that goods and items are synonyms for products in this table, but it's really good to confirm that for an LLM so that it doesn't start guessing. So what I'm able to do is kind of extend any of that metadata to be very specific to how it's used in the space. One example I always love to give is, if you have height in inches and you wanted to put it in centimeters, you could create another column, or you can just kind of guide the LLM on how to do that translation here directly. So anyways, I'll save this, and you'll notice that now if I come back to that products area, where did it go? I now see that I've set my synonyms and it's got my description, so the LLM's going to leverage that. Now, I can ask and answer any questions I want. I'm going to just start with asking which product sold the most units. When I start to use this agent, again, I'm kind of curating it right now as an author. I'm going to be able to kind of test, what's the performance like on these questions. So Genie's going to go ahead and find the relevant data. It's going to explain what sort of reasoning it applied in order to generate this answer. And it's going to kind of tell me I use this table, I calculated based on these steps. I can kind of check that, and if anything seems off, right, as an author, that's my opportunity to intercept it, refine it, kind of change its behavior. All of the use of Genie, by all your users, again, another nice thing is you don't have to kind of instrument a bunch of logging and monitoring on your own. We give that to you right out of the box, so you can see kind of different questions that have been asked by different users. Certainly if I reopen one of mine, I can, give it some thumbs up or thumbs down feedback, and because I'm an author, I'm also encouraged to add it to my eval set. So I mentioned that kind of throughout the process of using Genie as a text-to-SQL agent and kind of your broader platform, that we are trying to make it easier and easier for you, not have to kind of come up with everything from a blank page. We want to kind of suggest things intelligently based on what we know is already happening in the platform. So you've invested for years in the Azure Databricks platform. You've used it in a number of different ways. There's jobs that have been running for 10 years that have joined two tables the same way. We want to carry that knowledge forward and let the LLM behind Genie use that information. Of course, as long as you have permission to those tables. So any of these suggestions I can accept, I can reject, but I don't have to kind of think about what would actually be a good question to add to my eval set, what would be a good thing to add as a unit test. So that's the Genie UI, and certainly it's a little bit simpler when you're an end user versus an author, as I'm kind of doing here today, trying to curate my agent. But this is all trivial to set up, right? I didn't have to fire up VS Code. I didn't have to make a bunch of requests. I was just able to kind of do some of my testing directly in the platform. So that's our text-to-SQL agent. That's Genie. But what about Knowledge Assistant? So I mentioned, Knowledge Assistant was going to help us with unstructured data. So if I swap over to there, you can see, I can do the same thing. What's the name, description? I pointed it at the source, which I promised you this one would be Unity catalog data. And if all of this data was related to kind of like my actual, proprietary transactions, customers, et cetera, as kind of a bakehouse owner, here I'm using some market trends. So I can, again, test it out and just say, what is trending up in the market? And this is going to then go over all those documents, and it's going to give me a response back. And you can notice that this is, the endpoint, so I'm no longer in Genie. It is using a different agent to kind of help curate it, but I'm still getting, again, all sorts of information that I need as I'm developing this. where I can access the thoughts being used. I can then kind of say, okay, I think that was a little errant. I want to revise it to get to a more accurate answer. And you can see we get a TLDR because we're Databricks and everything starts with a TLDR, and then a breakdown here. You'll see again, consistent, right? How are we always helping you as kind of an author or curator of these to actually improve response quality? So I can actually go into any of those examples and leverage it. Now this is great. So we talked about Genie as the text-to-SQL agent. We talked about Knowledge Assistant as another brick that you can use in agent bricks. But what about when you want to use them together? Well, we have the Multi-Agent Supervisor here, and you'll notice that I've added a couple agents. You can add many more than 2, but I've taken our Knowledge Assistant here for KA, and again, I've noticed that we can kind of mention anything about trends in the industry. I've also hooked up that bakehouse space that we had here for Genie, and that has all the data related to my own business. And what we can do now is we can issue prompts that could be appropriate for either one of those from a single interface without having to navigate where's the right place to do it. So you can imagine, if I'm trying to make sure my end users are using AI as effectively as possible, I want them to be able to answer using trusted data, but without having to have a search and discovery problem, without having to think, do I need this thing or that thing? How do I find it? Did I bookmark it? Where did that thing go? So we can just ask, what are my top selling products, which should take us to our Genie space. So you'll see here the Bakehouse agent is our multi-agent supervisor. So it's going to decide to use Genie Bakehouse the Genie Bakehouse agent in this particular case. You can see that it's using Genie Bakehouse, and it gives us some information on the top products. But if I wanted to test the industry data, let's see if we route the right way. What is trending down in the industry? So now I've gone ahead and asked the multi-agent supervisor, again, the Bakehouse agent is the one doing all that intelligent routing for me. Now it has decided to use that Knowledge Assistant for market trends, and it's seamlessly routed there. I didn't have to tell it, go do this or that. It was able to kind of understand the context of both of those agents. Now, this is an example where those agents are very different. So, of course, it didn't really take much from me to get it to work this intelligently. But what's really nice is if I did want to kind of go and improve quality and kind of give some guidance on use agent A versus agent B versus agent C, I can do that right in the platform. So this is all in Databricks, right? This has been here for quite a bit of time, but what was always challenging until recently is, okay, great, I've curated everything, it's amazing. Maybe a business user spends some of their time in Databricks with kind of Databricks 1 going out, but more often they're in Teams 24/7. So what we've announced today is the ability to bring, for example, this Genie Bakehouse agent into Copilot Studio. So if I was going to bring this in, and I did a little bit of cutting because I know we're close to time, but I would go to my agents area. I'd create a new agent. I'm not going to do that today, but you can go through and you can essentially just add exactly what the agent is that you want. I'm going to go to the one I already brought in. And you'll notice here that all I had to do was decide if I'm not going to use the agent directly. If, for example, Genie can't answer a question, do I want to fall back to a different model? Is it 4.1? Is it chat, et cetera? Like all of that routing logic and fallback logic, previously you would have had to that would have all been on you as an app developer to figure out, okay, I'm building a custom Teams app. How do I actually make this a really robust experience? How do I make sure I'm covering for all of my bases? And now it's just out of the box. Similarly, all I did here was add Azure Databricks Genie as a tool. So I added that, I can test it. We'll use that same question to stay consistent. Or maybe we'll say, what are my worst selling products? Let's mix it up. What are my worst selling products? So before I fire this off and make it available to everybody via Teams, I want to actually test that out in process. This shouldn't look any different than any other agent in Copilot Studio. You'll see it kind of was pulling through everything that I had actually already configured in Azure Databricks over MCP. I can see the query string that I had entered in my test window, so it's now hitting the tool for that particular Genie space that has all my proprietary Bakehouse data. It's cooking a little bit to generate a plan, and now it's going to give me an answer. And again, as someone who's setting this up for everyone else, I can get a lot more information to review, and I don't have to implement any of this myself. I don't have to say, okay, write these logs to this source. I can actually review all of the output here. I can see if I got errors. But once I've done my testing and I'm ready to fire this off for everyone else, it's as simple. And again, you remember I've done no code so far. I've done all English, which is my favorite coding language. So if I go ahead and open my channels, there's a new one here for the Genie Bakehouse at Ignite, Teams and Copilot. So you'll notice here that I have the opportunity to use the agent M365, but I'm going to also use Teams today. That's what we started with, right? Like our business users operate in Teams. They want to operate on the same data. How do we give them access? So I'm going to fire that up, and just for the sharing of my screen being set to Chrome, I'm going to go ahead and use the web app. And we are going to be asked to allow to open this Genie Bakehouse. Let's do it. We're going to use that application. You can see I was testing it out. And why don't we ask, give me my top 10 selling products. So what that's going to actually do behind the scenes, you can see I kind of have that same little icon that we set up for the agent before. It's using kind of that custom application that's pointing at my Genie space. And behind the scenes, it is cooking and kind of asking that question. So if I went to my monitoring area, and I am getting the hook, but if I went to my monitoring area, I will see that same question being asked. Oops, sorry, that was the wrong one. I'll see that same question being asked, right? Show me the top 10 selling products that I cooked over here in my Copilot, and I'm going to get the answer back directly in Copilot, but I get that same logging in Databricks, I get that same logging in Azure, and in Copilot. So I've got my top answers, all of that without me doing any coding. All right, thank you guys.